Imagine an empire so vast, it ruled from the deserts of Egypt to the forests of Britain. Its armies were unstoppable, its architecture immortal, its culture unmatched. For centuries, Rome seemed invincible. But beneath the marble and gold, something fragile was breaking, not in its armies or borders, but in its money. The fall of Rome, one of history's greatest collapses, was not just about invaders or corruption. It was about the slow death of trust in the very thing that made its world function, the Roman denarius. Money is civilization's bloodstream. When it's pure, trade flows, trust thrives, and prosperity expands. But when it's poisoned, when value is manipulated, diluted, or forged, the whole system begins to die from within. Rome's story is the clearest proof of this. At the height of its power, around the 2nd century AD, Rome was the richest empire on earth. The silver denarius was its heartbeat, a small coin of near-pure silver that every soldier, merchant, and citizen trusted. You could spend it in Africa, in Greece, in Gaul. It was stable, universal, and powerful, the ancient equivalent of the dollar. But empires are expensive. The Roman army numbered in the hundreds of thousands. Roads stretched for thousands of miles. Palaces, baths, and arenas needed endless gold. As the empire expanded, so did the costs, and soon, even Rome's wealth couldn't keep up. Instead of cutting expenses or raising unpopular taxes, emperors turned to an easier trick, one that every government eventually learns. They debased the money. At first, the change was subtle. The silver content of the denarius dropped from nearly 100% to 90%, then 80%. A few decades later, it was 50%. By the 3rd century, under Emperor Gallienus, the denarius contained less than 5% silver. The rest was cheap metal, coated in a thin shine to deceive the eye. It looked the same, but it wasn't the same. And that illusion was deadly. Prices began to rise. Bread cost more each week, soldiers demanded higher pay, and merchants started rejecting Roman coins altogether. Some turned to barter. Others demanded payment in gold or foreign currency. Inflation, that silent tax no one votes for, began to consume the empire from the inside. Between 235 and 284 AD, Rome entered its most chaotic century, the crisis of the 3rd century. In just 49 years, there were more than 20 emperors, countless civil wars, invasions, and assassinations. The economy collapsed. The military, once Rome's pride, became its parasite, demanding ever more payment in worthless money. People hoarded gold, land, or livestock, anything real, anything that could survive the storm. The government tried to fight back, but every solution only deepened the rot. When merchants refused the bad coins, officials made it illegal to raise prices. Emperor Diocletian issued the famous edict on maximum prices, threatening death to anyone who sold above the government limit. The result? Markets froze. Goods vanished from stalls. Trade stopped. The empire was starving itself with its own policies. Desperate for stability, Emperor Constantine later introduced the solidus, a gold coin of reliable purity. It worked, for a while. The rich stored their wealth in solidi, and international trade revived. But the foundation, the silver currency that ordinary people used, never recovered. The gap between rich and poor widened. The elite had gold. The people had copper. Rome's collapse was not sudden. It was slow, silent, and predictable, the kind of decay that happens when numbers stop meaning what they used to. Every empire thinks it's different. Every empire believes it can print or debase without consequence. But Rome proved the truth. Once a currency loses credibility, power soon follows. The echoes of Rome's mistake are everywhere today. After World War I, Germany printed its way into hyperinflation, where a loaf of bread cost a wheelbarrow of cash. In Zimbabwe, the same story repeated, prices doubling by the hour, paper money worth less than the ink it was printed with. And in the modern West, the playbook hasn't changed, it's just more sophisticated. Governments borrow and print. Central banks inject liquidity. The numbers grow, but the value shrinks. When the U.S. abandoned the gold standard in 1971, money became pure belief, backed by nothing but confidence. For decades, it worked, because the world believed in the dollar. But confidence is fragile, and debt is relentless. The Romans learned that lesson with silver. We're learning it now with digits. Inflation is not a natural disaster. It's a choice, a hidden tax disguised as policy. Governments inflate to erase their own debts, shifting the cost onto citizens. It's a trick as old as empire, wrapped in new language, stimulus, quantitative easing, monetary accommodation, different words, same effect. The people pay, the powerful preserve their wealth. When money loses meaning, corruption flourishes. Officials accept bribes, soldiers demand extra pay, citizens cheat the system to survive. The moral decay that historians often blame for Rome's fall was not separate from its economic collapse, it was a symptom of it. When value becomes uncertain, so does virtue. By the time barbarian tribes crossed Rome's borders, the empire was already hollow. The walls were still standing, but the economy inside them was broken. The empire that once unified the Mediterranean world had become a patchwork of local fiefdoms, each clinging to what real value remained. And when the final blow came, it wasn't from an army stronger than Rome. It was from within, from the slow corrosion of trust. Trust, that's the real currency. Not gold, not paper, not digits on a screen. Trust that the coin in your hand means tomorrow what it means today. Once that trust dies, so does civilization's foundation. Rome's citizens learned it the hard way. Today, the parallels are impossible to ignore. We print money faster than we produce value. We mistake liquidity for wealth, credit for prosperity, and speculation for innovation. We've built global systems that depend on confidence, the same fragile belief that destroyed Rome's economy 1,700 years ago. When the next crisis comes, it won't look like invading legions. It'll look like frozen markets, failing currencies, and governments scrambling to restore the illusion of stability. And just like in Rome, the people will pay first through inflation, through taxes, through lost savings, while the architects of the system quietly survive. The Romans once thought their empire would last forever. Its coins said, aeternitas, eternity. But eternity, it turns out, doesn't survive bad money. If history teaches anything, it's this: no empire can debase its way to prosperity. You can't print trust. You can't inflate stability. And once people realize their money is dying, they stop believing not just in coins or credit, but in the system itself. Every empire has its currency, and every currency tells the story of its rise and its fall. So if you want to know how Rome truly fell, don't look to the barbarians at the gates, look to the silver that turned to dust.